Sanity of True Genius by Charles Lamb. So far from the position holding true that great wit or genius, in our modern way of speaking, has a necessary alliance with insanity, the greatest wits, on the contrary, will ever be found to be the sanest writers. It is impossible for the mind to conceive of a mad Shakespeare. The greatness of wit, by which the poetic talent is here chiefly to be understood, manifests itself in the admirable balance of all the faculties. Madness is the disproportionate straining or excess of any one of them. So strong a wit, says Cowley, speaking of a poetical friend, did nature to him frame, as all things but his judgment overcame, his judgment like the heavenly moon did show, tempering that mighty sea below. The ground of the mistake is, that men, finding in the raptures of the higher poetry a condition of exaltation, to which they have no parallel in their own experience, besides the spurious resemblance of it in dreams and fevers, impute a state of dreaminess and fever to the poet. But the true poet dreams being awake. He is not possessed by his subject, but has dominion over it. In the groves of Eden he walks familiar as in his native paths. He ascends the empyrean heaven, and is not intoxicated. He treads the burning marl without dismay. He wins his flight without self-loss through realms of chaos and old night. Or if, abandoning himself to that sever chaos of a human mind untuned, he is content a while to be mad with Lear, or to hate mankind, a sort of madness with Timon, neither is that madness nor this misanthropy so unchecked, but that, never letting the reins of reason wholly go, while most he seems to do so, he has his better genius still whispering at his ear, with the good servant Kent, suggesting saner counsels, or with the honest steward Flavius recommending kindlier resolutions. Where he seems most to recede from humanity, he will be found the truest to it. From beyond the scope of nature, if he summon possible existences, he subjugates them to the law of her consistency. He is beautifully loyal to that sovereign directress, even when he appears most to betray and desert her. His ideal tribes submit to policy. His very monsters are tamed to his hand, even as that wild sea brood, shepherded by Proteus. He tames, and he clothes them with attributes of flesh and blood, till they wonder at themselves, like Indian islanders forced to submit to European vesture. Caliban the witches are as true to the laws of their own nature, ours with a difference, as Othello, Hamlet, and Macbeth. Herein the great and the little wits are differenced, that if the latter wander ever so little from nature or actual existence, they lose themselves and their readers. Their phantoms are lawless, their visions nightmares. They do not create, which implies shaping and consistency. Their imaginations are not active, for to be active is to call something into act and form, but passive, as men in sick dreams. For the supernatural, or something superadded to what we know of nature, they give you the plainly non-natural. And if this were all, and that these mental hallucinations were discoverable only in the treatment of subjects out of nature, or transcending it, the judgment might with some plea be pardoned if it ran riot, and a little wantonized. But even in the describing of real and everyday life, that which is before their eyes, one of these lesser wits shall more deviate from nature, show more of that inconsequence, which has a natural alliance with frenzy, than a great genius in his maddest fits, as Withers somewhere calls them. We appeal to anyone that is acquainted with the common run of Lane's novels, as they existed some 20 or 30 years back, those scanty intellectual viands of the whole female reading public, till a happier genius arose, and expelled for ever the innutritious phantoms. Whether he has not found his brain more betossed, his memory more puzzled, his sense of when and where more confounded, among the improbable events, the incoherent incidents, the inconsistent characters, or no characters, of some third-rate love intrigue, where the persons shall be a Lord Glendemmer and a Miss Rivers, and the scene only alternate between Bath and Bond Street. A more bewildering dreaminess induced upon him than he has felt wandering over all the fairy grounds of Spenser. In the productions we refer to, nothing but names and places is familiar. The persons are neither of this world nor of any other conceivable one, an endless string of activities without purpose, of purposes destitute of motive. We meet phantoms in our known walks, phantasks only christened. In the poet we have names which announce fiction, and we have absolutely no place at all, for the things and persons of the fairy queen prate not of their whereabout, but in their inner nature, and the law of their speech and actions, we are at home and upon acquainted ground. The one turns life into a dream, the other to the wildest dreams gives the sobrieties of everyday occurrences. By what subtle art of tracing the mental processes it is effected, we are not philosophers enough to explain, But in that wonderful episode of the Cave of Mammon, in which the money god appears first in the lowest form of a miser, is then a worker of metals, and becomes the god of all the treasures of the world, and has a daughter, Ambition, before whom all the world kneels for favors, with the Hesperian fruit, the waters of Tantalus, with Pilate washing his hands vainly but not impertinently in the same stream, that we should be at one moment in the cave of an old hoarder of treasures, at the next at the forge of the Cyclops, in a palace and yet in hell, all at once, with the shifting mutations of the most rambling dream, and our judgment yet all the time awake, and neither able nor willing to detect the fallacy, is a proof of that hidden sanity which still guides the poet in his widest seeming aberrations. It is not enough to say that the whole episode is a copy of the mind's conceptions in sleep. It is, in some sort, but what a copy! Let the most romantic of us, that has been entertained all night with the spectacle of some wild and magnificent vision, recombine it in the morning, and try it by his waking judgment. That which appeared so shifting, and yet so coherent, while that faculty was passive when it comes under cool examination, shall appear so reasonless and so unlinked, that we are ashamed to have been so deluded, and to have taken, though but in sleep, a monster for a god. But the transitions in this episode are every whit as violent as in the most extravagant dream, and yet the waking judgment ratifies them,